This podcast is supported by Okidoki, the award-winning baby and kids online concept store aimed at bringing organic quality, sustainability, and style to your home. And Modibody Cyprus, which basically stocks life-changing underwear. Periods, incontinence, sweat, they've got you covered. Hello, my name is Eleni and I am the creator of the Mamamu podcast, a podcast that aims to bring a variety of topics to your ears and one that hosts discussions around mental health, social issues and parenting with a local focus. Today I am chatting with the lovely Thadd Correia, a Canadian director, actor, speaker and activist who has been living in Cyprus since 2007. He works as the head of the theatre department at a private school in Nicosia. And lately he's been busy promoting his new theatrical play, Just Tell Them Santa's Dead, an original series of one acts attempting to reclaim and modernise themes explored by classical playwrights such as Shakespeare, Euripides and Sophocles. Thadd, who has also participated in The Vagina Monologues in 2010, I was there, such a great show, The Wizard of Strovolos in 2013, and he was on the TEDx Nicosia stage in 2016. So Thadd puts an emphasis with this play on LGBTQ and minority communities. On the show today, he talks about living in Cyprus, but also living with depression, working with teens, and why he's bringing certain issues into the light through his work. Now, on with the show. Right. First of all, I wanted to say that I remember seeing you in 2000, was it 15 at the TEDx?
Yeah, it was a few
TED
years ago.
Saloon,
Yeah.
TED Salon in Nicosia.
Yeah.
I remember
you saw me speak. Oh.
I did. And I remembered
Wow.
you because I was fascinated by what you said.
Thanks.
How was that? How was that feeling?
It was nerve-wracking. I mean...
it was as nerve-wracking as it looked then.
it was. And, I wanted to try to make an effort to be off script when I was giving my TED Talk as well. So, I spent a lot of days sort of writing, thinking about what I was going to say, and then putting the talk together. And, the memorization part, it happened in a very short span of time.
Wow.
So, yeah, nerve-wracking, but I felt as if... I pulled it off. I got a message across, and I hope, that it's a message of hope and empowerment and something that can give people tools to sort of take control of their own life or view their life differently.
Yeah.
As a series of narratives and stories that we tell.
Is it on YouTube? I'm going to put...
It is,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll put the link in the show notes so people can find that. So how long have you been in Cyprus, Thadd?
Well, came here with my partner in 2007, so it's been a while, 16 years almost. And
what's it been like living in good old CY?
At the beginning, it was a little bit difficult because there wasn't really a lot happening as far as the LGBTQ community was concerned. I mean, there were some clubs and stuff like that, but there wasn't any sort of like other community events happening.
Yeah.
And when we got here, of course, I was married to my partner, and I wasn't able to sort of stay as the spouse of a, Cypriot because of the laws that were in place at the time. So actually, we took our case up to the Supreme Court level, where it was dismissed, but it was not on the grounds that we filed it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
It was
does.
the technicality.
Yeah.
Sort of, they said that someone else should have filed the complaint, not,
okay.
that kind of thing.
So what happened then?
So, I mean, we put that aside, and I got a permanent residence status. So they gave me that just as a concession kind of thing. They didn't actually want to recognize the marriage at the time. And then, I was able to stay, and there are a couple of other cases going through the court system at the same time. And, Accepted started up, and the first Pride event sort of formed around the negative comments that were made at the time.
So you've literally lived through can I call it progress?
Yeah.
Have we
significant progress
Yeah,
in the
right?
past couple of years. It was sort of halted, due to COVID, but before that, I mean, the LGBT plus community has been making, significant gains here. And, we're not quite, on an equal standing with everything as yet. The common law partnership, for instance, could be better. The recognition of marriages from third countries could be in place.
Yeah.
Trans rights and that kind of thing are making headway, but
And the creation of family as well.
yeah. So adoption. I think my partner and I were thinking of maybe adopting when we were 30, but it was a difficult process.
Yeah.
And so, eventually that sort of like faded away as we got older. And
Yeah.
we said, well, we're not going to have kids anymore. It's a bit late for that. So we'll be retiring soon.
Yeah. As a straight woman, it baffles me. It really does. It baffles me how one person can just go ahead and have as many kids as they want without any guidelines or, boxes to be ticked, especially as far as mental health is concerned and all that stuff. And then you've got people who would be actually excellent parents.
Who aren't in a position to have children.
Exactly. So,
and that goes, for cisgender, straight couples as well who can't conceive or have a difficult time. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles that they have to go through as well to have children.
Yeah. Oh, well. So, theater. You're head of drama at school here in Cyprus.
Yep. And I've been there for 13 years now.
Wow.
And, so it's been a while. I've developed the program sort of from the ground up. There were some things in place before I got there, but then I brought the program up to the level where we're sending kids off to university now. I have a few graduates in film school. And we send off a designer who's doing things at the Young Vic, like she's designing theater sets and stuff like that.
Wow.
So, we've had a pretty good success rate, and we have a fairly small program. So
we're
very proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah. I want to go back to the fact that you're working with kids.
Yes.
As I said before we turned the microphones on, whenever I get an educator or a teacher in the studio, I want to ask them what they're sensing, what they're getting from the kids nowadays, because, they're growing up very differently than we did, extremely, on a completely other level. And I find myself many times as a parent wondering, okay, there's these two roads. Which one do I take? Which one is less damaging? Which one is more? Yeah. And it's just... It's this whole confusion as a parent. But the kids, you work with kids. What ages are the kids that you work with?
They're from 12 to 17, 18.
So they're in the teenage hormone raging years.
We have a lot of discussions.
So what are you getting from them? What are the issues that they're facing? What makes them happy? What makes them sad?
Well, I mean, first of all, the stance I take with the kids always is you don't necessarily have to introduce any new information because they have access to the internet and Netflix, sometimes without any sort of limits at home. And the ones who have some limits at home, come into the school environment and get exposed to this anyway from some kids whose parents are more lenient, So
that is so
even
true.
if you have the rules at home, when they go out and, socialize, they're still talking about all of these issues. And, it's a lot of things about sex and gender and drugs and, all of those things that teenagers.
Yeah.
But I do find that this generation, because they're sort of more of a phone generation, they actually get into less trouble, I think, than we would have at that age.
Wow, I didn't think of that.
Because they spend a lot of time socializing online. They're sending messages back and forth and that kind of thing, and not actually socializing in person. So
yeah, and that's
like,
an issue for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's strange, but is that the new norm?
I think it is, and especially with COVID. I mean, a lot of that generation just got used to communicating online and not even seeing each other in person all that often.
Yeah,
we're only now starting to get out of that, but some of the younger kids. I mean, when we first got back from COVID, there was 12-year-olds who didn't know how to watch a movie because they hadn't been to the cinema since they were 10 or 9. So in years.
Yeah, that is years in child life.
Yeah, so they didn't know how to, they were expected to be quiet in certain, if you go to the theater or if you go to a movie, or they didn't know these sort of like social expectations because they hadn't experienced them, or they hadn't been taught because it's, we weren't there.
Yeah, I find it fascinating though that you did mention the fact that you do have discussions with them, and that there is a certain group of kids who are not exposed to all the debates and the ongoing discussions around sex and gender. And then you have the other side who probably come from an environment where discussions do happen.
Yes.
No matter the age, obviously, you do tend to try and be age appropriate.
Yes.
But coming from a personal experience with my 12-year-old, I've just reached the point where the answer to his question can't be, I don't want to tell you, or that isn't appropriate for you. That doesn't work.
And, I would tell parents that they have to do the same things that teachers do. When a kid comes with you, to you with a question, take a look, take some time, go do some research, get some reputable experts, look at what's being said, because things that even, we knew growing up have changed significantly. Things like, all of the information around AIDS and that kind of thing. There's a whole other series of things happening now with AIDS research and being non-detectable, positive or non-detectable, and the different medications that are available for things like that.
Yeah.
And those are constantly being updated. So don't expect or feel like you have to know everything when a question comes to you. Do your research. Go out there and find some reputable sources and see what's happening.
I mean, I always say that it's when a question's fired to me from the kids there, and I don't know, the answer will be I don't know. It won't just be this blurting out whatever I think is appropriate to say. And I did actually want to say that this actually turned out to kind of be helpful for my 12-year-old, who can now debate in his classroom about various social issues. Obviously, obviously he doesn't have all the information, but the fact that he's using critical thinking, questioning, and all that.
I sometimes find it interesting as well that the kids often know more than we do. And I ask them to be patient with me. So things like chosen pronouns and things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm a little bit slow on the, on the pickup. When a student comes and says, I'd like to be referred to as they, them, or, change their pronouns kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, for me, I have to remember, okay, well, let me just make a concerted effort to, respect this person and who they want to be, and things
Exactly.
like that. So, yeah.
Exactly.
We're not perfect. This is
No, and I mean, the whole debate about pronouns and all that. It's at the end of the day, I mean, what's the problem? What is the problem?
it's like a chosen name as well. I mean, with my name Thadd, I like people to call me Thadd, but sometimes people call me Tad, or I kind of roll with it. But I think any of us who have sort of difficult names to say in English, I mean, have had that experience of, okay, well, let me just go with like Costa instead of Konstantinos or something like that. So, we're used to choosing what we want people to call us, and, asking people to call us certain things.
Yeah.
I think that is just sort of a natural progression that we can move into pronouns as well.
I have it a lot with, I was saying this yesterday on a podcast, that my name is Eleni, and yet people tend to call me Elena.
Yes.
And I really don't like it.
Yeah, it kind of, because you're like, no, but I would like to be.
I really don't like it. And it's like literally one letter at the end. And I'm like, no, that's not my name.
Because you as a person, you've identified with this,
exactly.
this name. And,
exactly. And would you argue with me if I said my name is Eleni and not Elena? Would you insist on calling me Elena?
Something, yeah.
There you go. Problem solved for whoever had problems with the pronoun debate. Oh, God. So let's get into, the title.
Yes, I was.
Okay, the title, guys, is of the theatre production that is going to happen. It's called Just Tell Them Santa's Dead. I had to hide that from my kids. We're talking about letting them.
And this is also why we're not doing it at Christmas time, because I didn't want parents buying.
I don't have a problem with any of it, but letting my kids know that Santa doesn't exist or that he's dead is something that I will not do. Anyway, how did that come to you? What's behind that? I don't want to give too much away from the play. Oh, yeah, don't, because I'm coming.
Generally speaking, I mean, if you keep up this pretense to sort of live in a world where, that's somewhat fantastical, and you're only doing it to sort of benefit from it, but it's not a healthy thing to be doing, then at a certain point you kind of have to give up that fantasy. And, you have to let it go and face reality sometimes. Yeah. Even sort of like, I'm throwing it out there, but if someone is in a relationship that they find is physically or psychologically abusive, they may tell themselves stories about, but, I have the perfect family. I have, I don't need to get out of this.
I'm comfortable.
This is fine. Yeah, this is all fine. And it sort of normalizes a system of abuse that, shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
So, sometimes they have to face that they're keeping up a fantasy in order to, for whatever reasons, and that really they should be getting out of things.
Yeah, like that. Probably to protect themselves, but also what I said about comfort. Yeah. How hard is it to step out of your comfort zone, and when you take it to the level of abuse? You've got a whole other story or stories going on there. But, stepping out of your comfort zone, we could go back to the TEDx thing that you did. I'm sure that was stepping out of your comfort zone. Yeah. Or me doing this now, opening my own studio, having my own podcast. Scary as fuck. Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to have dreams. I mean, I love Santa, but I really love Santa. I think, Santa serves a purpose at a certain point in our lives. And we need to have these fantasies sometimes to maybe push us forward or to dream big and to go for things. But at the same time, if they're, if they're helping negative patterns in our life, then we need to let go.
So coping strategies.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
It is. And it's once again, I mean, I keep referring to the TED Talk, but it's telling ourselves narratives that are somewhat delusional at some point.
Yeah.
And sometimes things are clear to other people around us, but not necessarily to ourselves. So sometimes it takes someone, a close friend or a relative to kind of step in and say, you're living in a fantasy and it's not healthy. And,
Yeah.
you have to put this away.
So before we speak a bit more about the coping strategies and, resilience comes to mind as well a lot. Can you, without giving away too much, what will we see when we come? How is the format of the play?
Let's for one act that I wrote over a number of years. I wrote them from different perspectives. Generally one of the characters in each piece sort of reflects something about myself. We start off with James and Janine, who are meeting over, their brother and sister, and they're meeting over a particularly difficult Christmas season. And, I can say this, Janine's sort of living in this fantasy of the perfect marriage. They meet and they have to discuss this. In the second one, Gas Can Kid, it takes place in rural Ontario because I'm from Toronto. And it's these two co-workers. They work at a gas station out in the middle of nowhere. And something happens, and it sort of speaks to my relationship with my sisters. I'm from a very sort of matriarchal family on both sides of my family, actually.
Oh, wow.
But I always felt like I was the only male for a while. And so I grew up with that, cisgender male sort of programming that I had to protect my sisters and I had to, sort of those sorts of responsibilities that were put upon me.
Yeah.
So it sort of speaks about being protective of someone you care about in Gas Can Kid. And then we go into Lazy R Us. And this is a gay couple who's, they're dealing with depression. One of them is severely depressed, and the other one is trying to understand this. And it goes over things with their friend who's a drag queen as well, a drag performer. And, they're all trying to come to terms with how to deal with this. And, it sort of deals with depression, but also the view of depression as being just lazy. That sometimes, when you suffer from depression, you don't want to do things and you need to take time to recharge and move away from the world a bit and
isolate yourself.
Sometimes, and this very much is what this is. A lot of that is my story. Sometimes it's just difficult to get out of bed and face the world and move out there and do things. And it's sometimes perceived as simply laziness. And, that this is something negative and you can just pull out of it. And why don't you just buck up and face the music?
I would like to come back to that. If you want to go into the fourth one, and then we'll come back to what?
And the last one is a sort of a subtle look at control in relationships, where it's not overtly sort of physically abusive, but where one person definitely has control over another one. Okay. So it's a couple who's trying to broker a split between them. So they're speaking about their issues, but they're also, it becomes apparent quite early on that this is a controlling relationship and also a manipulative relationship.
So a lot of what you wrote and you are about to produce is relationships.
Yes.
Between couples, siblings, family members. And in Cyprus, we have family is very important.
Yes.
It's right up there. But the thing that we don't often talk about in Cyprus is that you don't get to choose your family, and many times you can't agree with members of your family. Mm-hmm. And it can be heartbreaking. It can really be painful once you get to the realization that this person who has grown up in the same house that I have, same parents, same...
Their ideologies are completely different.
Completely different. So obviously for you to create this, you find relationships between people fascinating.
I do, and I think I'm also fascinated with the things that people don't speak about in relationships that really should be spoken about. So things like ideologies that don't necessarily match. I mean, could we find a way to bridge that gap somehow, or how can we work together to sort of get to a more common understanding of where we see ourselves?
Do you feel the problem is that we were never taught to do that, or perhaps that maybe, I don't know, it goes without saying? I don't know. What is it?
I think in the past it was about being right. Sort of, we were taught that we need to be correct or we need to be right, and we shouldn't sacrifice that
for anyone and anything.
And I think that going into that, it's sort of like you're negotiating your feelings, but you need to first put on the table, where do we stand? What do we have in common, actually? And then move from that rather than a place of I'm right and you're wrong. And this is how we move forward. It should be I'm your sister, I'm your brother, I'm your, relative. And, we'd like to, we've seen that we'd like to get along together. We'd like to, find common ground and ways for communication. And then go ahead that way. But I think in the past it's just been like, okay, no, you're just completely off, and I'm not going to open communication with you. Yeah,
these are my beliefs. This is what I stand for, and it's not changing. But in fact, and I was listening to a podcast the other day with a couple therapist, and she was saying that relationships evolve.
Yeah.
They're not static.
And they change, and
people change.
And they grow.
And there are different experiences that hit them along the way, whether they're good, whether they're bad. And so, it's almost like a bit of a cliche to say communication is key. It actually is.
And it's the type of communication as well. I mean, and it's sort of making agreements along the way that we want common things.
Yeah.
You have to make agreements. It's not just communication. You're not just trying to have your say and get your message across. You also really need to listen, and you need to see, how your ways can come together.
I think listen. That's another key word here. Active listening, like genuinely listening to what the other person is trying to say to you. And that's another thing that we don't know how to do. We speak and we're just waiting for our turn for the other person to finish.
Absolutely.
So it's our turn to say what we want to say. Yeah. So you spoke about depression.
Yes.
And I used the word resilience before that. So there's resilience, there's push through, there's be brave.
Yes.
Just get out of your comfort zone and go and do it. But on the other hand, you have people who quite literally find it impossible to do that.
Yes. I think it's that it has to do with not knowing the right strategies. It has to do with there's embarrassment. There's not wanting to speak about it because all of this is sort of like, if you can't deal with this depression, then you're weak. There's sort of that mentality.
Do you mind me asking you, when did you come to the realization that you were actually suffering from depression? Was it something specific, or?
It was quite early. I was 17, 18.
Really?
I mean, from the time I was a teenager, I knew that I was, suicidal thoughts and that kind of thing. Pretty serious. And, being gay in a very religious household as well sort of fed that cycle.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, how to be proud of myself or how to be, a good person and still keep up a relationship with my family, for instance. We're great now, but it's taken years of communication and trying to find where we have common ground and that kind of thing. And they're still very religious, they serve at church and pray every day and, that kind of thing. And, but that doesn't mean that they don't love me and care for me.
Yeah.
So, and we've negotiated that.
I find, I'm, having so many conversations on the podcast and obviously meeting so many people as well. The religion part, with the gay part, I've spoken to older parents as well of kids who have kids who are gay. And they're like, we've been taught a certain thing for, the whole of our lives. Man, woman, marriage, family, God. And then all of a sudden they're being asked to step out of their comfort zone and accept the fact that there is also this.
Yeah.
And they find themselves torn between wanting to love and accept their child and then having this rhetoric and this ideology that's coming on the other side.
Yeah. No, it's...
And you've actually experienced this.
I have, but it's not... I think that my partner and I have a good relationship with my in-laws as well. And I think it's come from a lot of not giving up on them or cutting off communication. So on both sides. And also, when I said before that, sometimes I have difficulty changing pronouns when somebody asks me to.
Yeah.
You have to be patient with the older generation as well, because they were brought up with all of this. So, I would say if you're going through this as well, try to be patient on both sides, and as long as you're in a relationship where there's care and there's love and there's you'll get through, I think.
Do you think it's also about breaking certain patterns of the past and some conditioning that we've just really gone through a lot? And I'm talking about maybe the younger generation now.
What type of conditioning?
What type of conditioning? So, it could be man, woman.
Okay.
It could be, I don't know.
So just to move beyond these sort of...
Yeah. How... it's turning... I mean...
It's, what? I know it seems sort of cliche, but look at the kids.
I'm looking at them. I've got 3 of them. I'm looking at them.
Really? The kids can teach us a lot. They're actually having these discussions about respecting one another and things like that we didn't necessarily... Conversations we didn't necessarily have at their age.
We didn't.
But they respect each other's identities. They can respect each other. And really, I mean, it's sad to say, but the kids are learning to hate more now than they did in the past. Like most of their environments are quite, sort of open, but then when they encounter, I don't want to say names, but toxic masculinity, YouTubers and things like that online, if they don't have sort of a home base that's supportive and taking them through a way to, care and love for people, they kind of get caught up in this sort of negative rhetoric that just is toxic. And
you said you weren't going to mention a name, and I don't know if it's the name that I'm going to mention right now, but because I did have a discussion very recently. Basically, I was invited to a school to speak about podcasting, and I asked the kids what podcasts they listen to, and 2 or 3 of the boys said that they listened to Andrew Tate.
Yeah, that's just one. There's so many more. So I don't want to just focus on one. I want to say that it's a whole bunch of them.
It is. And, and it's what we say very often is that this is just a name that has just happened to spring out and, in our face because of the things that he was saying. But there are so many of them out there who are doing it maybe in a more subdued way, but they're still doing it. And, at that moment, when the boy said, we listened to Andrew Tate, I think I went bright red and then I started sweating.
Oh, no.
And then you think and you say, okay, this is my chance to have a discussion. Mm-hmm. This is my chance to ask them. So, when you, and I posted about it on my Instagram stories, and the amount of educators and teachers who contacted me and said, we're still having to deal with this at school.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's not just because of that name, that person. It's the whole discussion around what he's saying.
I think we're in a position right now where we have a lot of minority groups like the LGBTQ plus community, and equality in Cyprus is still not there for women, and we're doing a lot to focus on that. And in the meantime, there's sort of a demonization of the cisgender heterosexual male. And okay, that's great for old white, white men that have benefited from the system.
Yeah.
But it's not good for young boys at all. Because what the message that the younger generation is hearing now is that these are bad guys. And they sort of like just turn into...
Exactly.
Turn into what we tell them they are. So
exactly. No, I mean, I'm speaking as a mother of 3 boys.
Yeah.
Just thinking of the fact that they are boys now and that they will grow up to be privileged white men. Yeah. And, I find myself speaking about privileged white men and the power that they have. And I'm thinking, okay, these are my kids, in the future.
But the thing is, the children don't have that power. So they kind of like think we're crazy talking about it because they're like, what do you mean? My mom still tells me to go to bed at 8. The women in my life are the ones ruling my world. My teachers are mostly female.
Yeah.
So these little boys are growing up and sort of getting this strange message, and then they disengage from any sort of attempt to help. Yeah. And this production I could not have done without the support of cisgender straight males who are supportive of their wives and their families and LGBTQ issues, So we just have to, we have to engage them and include them and, make sure that they are loved and needed.
Yeah. Do you feel, or do you feel that there is a lack of positive male role models for our boys? I mean, we speak a lot about empowering young girls and, when it comes to body image and sexuality and I always feel that there's a bit of a gap when it comes to young boys and
just a positive,
what they look up to. And, and that's where people and men like Andrew Tate sort of like come into the slot. But what...
It sort of taps into what young boys want. They want the cars. They want, they want these things. So, I mean, and I think, young girls want those things too. They want they want the cars. They want the,
Yeah.
I think it just glamorizes toxic masculinity. I think that's what it is. So, being good and kind and that kind of thing is just seen as, oh, this is just everyday life. You don't do that to be successful. These are some of the actual conversations I've had with kids that they've looked at me and said, well, the world works with, the strongest person gets everything. And then, so
kindness gets you nowhere. Yeah. Being weak gets you nowhere.
It doesn't, it isn't anything positive.
Yeah.
But then, this is what they truly believe.
Yeah.
Without someone to sort of like pull them back and say, well, let's look at other people around the world who are successful and who are giving back to their communities and who are working, and maybe even just like take them away from the podcast, the negative podcast for a bit, and, take them out and do some activities with, positive male role models in your community. I mean, it could be an uncle. It could be, it's people close to.
It is quite important that the messages of, being vulnerable, being kind, being sensitive, that they do come from other male role models and that it's not just us, the mums or...
And also, I mean, algorithms have a lot to do with this.
Yeah.
So, because it's sort of like this toxic masculinity message will come attached to just something as innocent as I like these cars.
Yeah.
Or I like this video game, and it starts young at like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And then the algorithm starts feeding this towards them. So, I mean, if I was a parent, I would honestly be looking at my 8 or 9-year-olds, if they have any sort of online
Device.
present,
Yeah.
even if it's their PlayStation or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe throw some science things in there, or throw some equality.
Go over the phone and say, change the algorithm.
Add this
in.
podcast to their like playlist or something. Podcasts that are more positive and empowering, and and then it'll change actually the algorithms on their computers to show them more.
That's so true. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a simple thing, but
it's a simple thing.
Just go in and add some positive things to
that could work, because it's scary knowing that a 15-year-old algorithm will remain like that for the rest of their life.
And you know what? Even if you put something on their playlist and it doesn't necessarily, like they don't necessarily listen to it, just the fact that it's there, it'll attract more sort of positivity.
Yeah. Oh my God, the music. We're at that stage right now where there's a lot of rap going on. Thank God he's not into trap and that. But we were listening to Eminem the other day, and I'm a fan of Eminem. And he was like, my son was like, the B word. And he was like, you said not to say that. And, you're singing it now. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how to explain that.
It's about critical thinking, though. I mean, honestly, if they're in if they are critical thinkers and they're really looking at what they're consuming, music, media and whatnot, then it's okay. They can distance themselves from what's reality and what is just sort of a creative endeavor.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to pull it back to the plays as well, but the characters in my plays are not like role models in any sense of the word. They're actually pretty horrible people.
Okay. So they're regular human beings like us.
Yeah. But these are tragedies. They're not,
we didn't say that part, actually. It's based on...
They're tragic and a little bit comedic, but, I think we should be able to create these things as well so that we can discuss things. It really is about raising kids who are critical thinkers, who can look at things and say, is this loving and caring, or is this just a piece of art or music or whatever that was created as a hateful piece or something like that.
Or to get clicks and views. Because that's what it is. That's what matters now. Clicks, views, likes.
And extremists get the clicks.
Exactly. Exactly. So you said that the characters are probably horrible human beings or horrible people.
There's probably only one who's who I would say strive to be that person, but the rest are dealing with things. I mean,
What about the actors that are playing these horrible? I'm joking. Yeah. What about the actors?
The actors are amazing. I've worked with a few of them on other projects. So we have Spiros Ginis, who it's his first time on stage as an actor, but he's done shows in the past. And he's going to be a drag queen in this one.
Oh, wow.
He loves it. We're working on his makeup right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And David Dimitriou and I have been working here in Cyprus for a long time. He was with ACT, the Anglo-Cypriot Theatre, for a long time, and we did an improv group called Board of Directors together. He's a really talented actor. And Andros Zacharias, he's sort of a public speaker, and he's an accountant by day. And
love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, he's really great. He just came, I think he was just the first runner-up in the last Cyprus Poetry Slam competition. So, he's wonderful.
Okay.
And Anna Gilardi is actually a student of mine, and she's 16. She's playing a 16-year-old character in the play as well. Very mature, and she's coming into her own as an actor, and she's really, stepped up to the challenge. And Merlina Zekios is, she's going to be playing Akame, and she's a lecturer at one of the universities, and she's an amazing human being, and she's a musician, and she's a poet, and I think she has a book called Karma and Lullabies, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna, you should get your hands on that if you can.
When we're finished, send me the link, and I'll try and put that in the show notes as well. So you managed to get like a good group of solid, good actors for this.
And, it's because I've been working in Cyprus in theater for, since 2010 or thereabouts. And I've sort of built a core group of people that I really like to work with. And what I'm hoping to do is to create opportunities for English-speaking actors to just to create unique pieces of theater here in Cyprus. I find that there's a lack of sort of accessible theatrical pieces, and what I mean by that is I find that a lot of the stuff being produced in Cyprus are either plays that have been done many times over. They're sort of the classics, and then the new material is sort of very avant-garde and not always accessible by everyone except for artists. I mean, I really appreciate what's being done, and places like the Buffer Fringe Festival and that kind of thing are amazing places for artists to create new pieces. But I don't always find them accessible to the general public, because I think sometimes the general public wants to go in to see a theatrical piece with characters having discussions, or
yeah you want to be able to feel inspired on maybe like a personal level as well. Are there any plans to do any kiddie theaters so we can bring our kids and get those messages to them in this way? I
will do my best.
Kids theater in Cyprus, it's very kiddie.
Yeah.
It's very good, and there's almost like it's either really babyish, or it's just not for them. They won't get it.
There's someone at Little Muse Theatre in Larnaca does some wonderful things for kids as well.
Is that
Catherine Bridger?
We did go to one of those many years ago with the kids. It was lovely.
No, she's still doing some great things.
Yeah,
I think she has 2 productions on right now as well. I'm going to see if I can branch out as well.
Okay.
But
personal request.
Okay.
I will. And I've got it on the podcast now, so you can't say no.
I can't say no. I have to come up with something.
Okay, so Thadd, this will be coming out on the 28th.
Yes.
Tell us what's going on, and I mean, I've booked my tickets, so I'm safe.
So it's Just Tell Them Santa's Dead. Tickets are available at Sold Out Tickets, and you can book for the March 31st or April 1st shows, and that's going to be at Teatro Dentro. And then the following week will be at Synergio Performing Arts Space in Limassol.
Okay, so the first 2 shows are in Nicosia,
and the second 2
and the second 2 are in Limassol.
Yes.
So go get your tickets.
We're planning to do maybe more shows in the future, because ticket sales have been going well, and maybe people respond positively, we'll bring it back.
Yeah, please do. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on. This
and your energy. It was lovely to see you again, and I will see you on April 1st when I come to the theatre. Thank you. Links for Thadd's TEDx Nicosia talk and where to get tickets to the show Just Tell Them Santa's Dead will be included in the show notes, so go and check there. Thank you, Thadd, for coming on the show, and thank you for your work. We definitely need more gems like you in the education system. Find my social media handles in the show notes too. Remember to rate and or review the podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get yours, and share it if you can too. You can also support the Mum podcast by subscribing to my Patreon. Once again, thank you for tuning in and listening. Big love to all. And remember, be well and be kind. Bye.